fwydchickn, Zane, Elgin, Master the Basics, Shinmen, and even Betosky. They were all wrong about Ixia's best build and emblem. Yeah, okay, we also recommended the wrong build. But that's why we have heroes like our itemization god Strongwill, and we both combined our powers to create the real best build for Ixia. Let me know your thoughts after watching the whole video, and let's clear up some misconceptions about Ixia so you fully understand the potential she has. Ixia's playstyle isn't really a DPS focused one if you do it right. Outside of her ult, Ixia's playstyle is actually more similar to someone like Brody, Beatrix, or Cliff. Contrary to the popular belief, she isn't as weak in the laning phase as players made her out to be. Though she may be lacking in damage compared to the mentioned heroes before, the healing from her beam attacks are absolutely OP. You can pretty much win any 1v1 scenario in the laning phase by just abusing the hell out of your passive. And with proper engagement and timing, she can be a menace in the laning phase. For this, you should do something like a poke burst type of gameplay. Outside of her ult, of course. Spam your skills, activate your passive as much as you can to pressure the enemy, and retreat when necessary to avoid further damage. Once you got the upper hand, you can use your ult as a finisher, just like what I did with the Leslie right here. Though, once you're in your ult state, she becomes a fully fledged DPS marksman similar to 𝐾𝐲 because of her insane targeting ability. She's a very unique marksman that incorporates two gameplays into one hero, which is the reason why it was a little tricky to come up with a perfect build and playstyle for her. Also, another misconception about her is her attack speed. I'm sure many of you already noticed that her attack speed animation is really slow, even when having maxed out attack speed stats. This is why it generally isn't recommended using golden stuff on her, as the cap increasing from its passive is basically wasted. Now lastly, before we actually go through her best build and emblem, let's have a look at how the healing from her passive actually works. Since you can't gain any lifesteal from her normal attacks, you can gain heals from her beam attack instead. What's cool about this is that the heal you gain from this is equal to the amount of damage the beam attack deals. So, if your beam attack deals 658 damage on an enemy hero like here, you will also heal exactly 658 HP under normal circumstances. So is slapping 2 or more blade of this burst the way to go then for the max amount of damage? Not really, but more to that after we talk firstly about the emblem. In our Ixia guide we suggested using the marksman emblem. Though, after some more testing, we realized that this emblem is actually underperforming and weaker than we thought. So, instead of using the marksman emblem, I strongly suggest that you should use the assassin emblem on her. It gives 16 adaptive penetration, which means you basically negate all defense of your counterpart, and this massively benefits Ixia in the early game. Apart from dealing way more damage to your counterpart, the heals you gain from your passive are also massively increased. This I could prove with the simple test I did in the practice mode with no items on level 1. Our bot Layla always loves to be the guinea pig. When we compare the damage from the assassin emblem and the marksman emblem, the assassin emblem deals around 16% more damage. And before you say, but the marksman emblem gives you higher DPS, when I tortured this poor Zilong bot for 1 minute with basic attacks, the marksman emblem have a DPS of 150 to 152, while the assassin has a DPS of 152 to 154. And since you're not spamming your attacks for 1 minute straight, the difference in a real match is even higher. So, this makes the assassin emblem already better than the marksman emblem, but on top of that you also gain 3% movement speed. With how little mobility Ixia has, this is really an important bonus stat for her. Now in the late game, the different emblems play a less significant role as always, and especially against tanky enemies the flat penetration isn't that useful, but it's still the better choice, and why should you go for something that is less effective? Now for the talents, I still recommend using the 3 I have included in my Ixia guide: agility, tenacity, and quantum charge. The thing that Ixia lacks the most is mobility, and having these 3 offers Ixia the best chance of survival. I don't really like using damage increasing talents like High and Dry and Weapon Master, since Ixia already deals enough damage without them. Also remember, a dead marksman can't deal damage, which is why glass cannon marksmen like Layla and Mia, who deal an insane amount of damage, are never picked in high ranks, simply because they are way too easy to kill. Now, let's continue with the most fun part, her real best build. We initially had the wrong assumption about her build, and I will talk over the items and description alongside with the build path you should generally go for. Let's get started with your first item, Hunter Strike. We will be skipping building any boots for the meantime, since you're staying on your lane anyways. Yes, even the brown boots are not needed. Focus on your core item first. At first glance, you might be thinking that Ixia is doing basic attacks about 90% of the time. She's a marksman after all, so Corrosion Scythe should be more beneficial in the early game, right? Well, that item would still work in most cases, but there are 3 things that Hunter Strikes gives you that Corrosion Scythe doesn't. Firstly, you get 80 physical attack instead of 50, which is, by the way, the second highest physical attack you can get from any item. Secondly, you get another 15 flat penetration, so you're boosted up to 31 in total, which is a huge advantage as you will deal much more damage than you usually would. The enemy marksmen basically have negative defense stats against you, as they have a basic physical defense of around 15 without any items. And thirdly, the extreme movement speed boost from its passive, which complements the extra movement speed you gain from your first skill. As first item, you have to build Fury Hammer though, which is part of the build path of Hunter Strike. It's honestly one of the best component items that exist in the game, and you should always build it first if you're building Hunter Strike or Blade of the 𝐵𝐻𝑃𝑠𝐻. Some players even buy Fury Hammer as a standalone item in the beginning and sell it later. Now, Corrosion Scythe only gives you a bunch of attack speed and slows, but your damage, especially your passive's damage, won't be as much compared when you build Hunter Strike. I know you could be still conflicted about this, but think about this for a second. You may think that Hunter Strike would not be as good as you're attacking less frequently, meaning you can activate your passive less often and you sacrifice your DPS. But, and here comes a big but, no, not that one. You have your skills, which helps you to put stacks on your enemies. With a little bit of animation cancelling, you don't need to rely on attack speed during the early game. What animation cancelling is, you ask? Well, since we all know now that Ixia have some really slow animations, you can speed up the process of proccing her passive with this simple combo. Basic attack, first and second skill, boom, passive. You would notice that it's slightly faster than just spamming your basic attacks, which is really useful to heal your lost HP. You could also use a basic attack, one skill, another basic attack, passive, and then your other skill, instead of unleashing both of your skills at the same time. You will be able to easily proc this item's passive when doing this combo. If you feel that your counterpart is stronger than you or the enemy constantly ganks your lane though, then building steel leg plates first is another great option. If you didn't know, you only need one minion wave to build leather jerkins to have a useful physical defense item. As a marksman, you should put your safety above anything else because you need to farm. Farming is the most important thing a good marksman player has to master. By the way, if you want a deep item analyzed video for your main or your full gameplay analyzed, check out my YouTube membership program and join the 𝐷𝐻𝐻 family today. Okay, on to the next item. As you've already gotten your first item, it will be wise to have your boots after that. I generally suggest using tough boots above all other boots, simply because of the 30% CC and slow duration reduction. Though there are certain situations where it would be better to use its physical counterpart, warrior boots. I'd rank this a little lower than tough boots, but there will be times where the enemy doesn't have much CC nor magic damage. Then building warrior boots instead will be better. These are the boots I'd recommend, but Strongwill also recommends magic shoes if you're more the offensive type. This will let you spam your skills more with the extra 10% cooldown reduction, and when you pair that up with Hunter Strike and the next item that we will tackle now, you will get 30% cooldown reduction in total, which is a lot. For the next item, we need to build Endless Battle to fully utilize her skill-based playstyle. To be honest, we were all a bit skeptical at first, but when we tried it out for a couple of matches, we realized it works much better than we initially thought. Though there are certain scenarios where Endless Battle may be lacking, it is still an extremely good item that you should build most of the time. I mean, just look at all these stats that you get from a single item. If you've played Ixia after her release, you might have noticed that she runs out of mana really fast during the early to mid stages of the game. Having Endless Battle will fix this problem as it gives you a really good mana regen. You can even build a magic necklace at the very first item before Fury Hammer. Having Endless Battle equipped, you also deal extra true damage after every skill cast, so you wouldn't be too behind in DPS. From all of my gameplays, you can deal around 200 to 300 true damage at any point of the game. So if you time your skills right between your basic attacks, as this effect has a 1.5 second cooldown, you can pretty much double those numbers with each combo. It has a little learning curve of getting used to how low the attack speed is during the early game, but once you get the hang of it, the enemy you're laning against will get one hell of a beating. Again, before mindlessly building this item with any item that pops up, prioritize Azure Blade first, as this lets you deal 50 true damage after every skill with a basic attack. If you're facing many tanky enemies with a lot of HP though, you can swap Endless Battle for Demon Hunter Sword. Yes, you will be losing some of the nice Endless Battle stats, but in return you're able to dish out some nice damage against those tanky MFers. When you already know that you need as much DPS as you can, because the enemies have a really tanky lineup, it will be the best to go for this build path. Fury Hammer, Hunter Strike, Boots, Swift Crossbow, Corrosion Scythe, Demon Hunter Sword. Wait, Corrosion Scythe? Yes! Although we did not build it as the first item, we still need it to balance out the build. With how damage focused the first two items are, we have to balance it out with some attack speed, which we get from Corrosion Scythe, as this item gives us the most attack speed out of all items we have in the game. It also slows the enemy when you do basic attacks, and it can stack up to 20% since Ixia is a ranged hero. Okay, that was like a thanks Captain Obvious information. Do keep in mind to always build Swift Crossbow first when you're building Corrosion Scythe. That way, you will have the mini version of Corrosion Scythe that is so cute, and you have a little bit more attack speed and a little bit slow, and it's just way more useful this way. Lastly, the 5th and 6th slot are utility items that should be built according to the enemy's lineup. Usually you will build Malefic Ward to penetrate the heavy armor of your enemies away, and then you add in defense items. Typically, it's either Wind of Nature to negate any physical damage for 2 seconds, or Rose Gold Meteor for a shield and some magic defense. But you can also build pure defense items like Immortality or Athena's Shields. As a general rule of thumb, if the enemy has a lot of physical damage dealers, you can go for Wind of Nature. It also gives you extra physical attack, more attack speed, and some physical lifesteal, which is all very useful for you. If the enemy has that extremely annoying Burst Mage while also having some heavy amount of physical damage, you should go for Rose Gold Meteor. If the enemy has so much magic damage that their physical damage dealers aren't a big threat, go for Athena's Shield. And if it's the very late game, I'm talking about 20 minutes with a 60-second respawn or longer, go for Immortality first, and then swap it out with the items mentioned before once you used its passive, or Winter Junction for the freeze effect. Now watch this video where I tell you which other 20 heroes are super strong in the current meta in solo queue. And let me give a huge shout out to our MLG family members, especially our Mythical Glory members like Duelist, Pro Gamer, and Fanny Bootcamp. See you over there!